Now, news is coming through that the opposition PNP has called a press conference for midday today, Thursday, 29th May 2025. They are going to be putting the spotlight, listeners, on this announced appointment by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service of Dennis Strong to serve as Chief Technical Director, essentially the operational head of the Financial Investigations Division. We're not surprised. It is not surprising. The PNP are quintessential hypocrites. It is very easy. I say it all the time. They're a gift that keep on giving. I say it all the time. What you have on the part of the PNP is always expediency, not principle. Just in recent weeks, concerns were raised regarding Ronnie Florence at the Integrity Commission. Well-founded concerns. Yes? In this instance, and the PNP didn't concur with the concerns that were raised then, but in this instance, consequent on a competitive recruitment, Dennis Strong, based on his credentials, his track record that spans political parties and political administrations in this country, which speaks for itself, he has been tapped to serve as Chief Technical Director at the FID. And the PNP is going to be convening a press conference to say that he's supportive of Holness. Rubbish. Dennis Strong, listeners, and we need to understand this. Dennis Strong is a certified chartered accountant, qualified and certified. And so, oftentimes, especially in relation to finance-related discussions, just like commentators like Ralston Hyman, Dennis Strong, just like Anne Shirley some time ago, just like John Jackson or Keith Collister, this tax expert, what's her name? Miss Peart, Alison Peart. Yes? These persons oftentimes feature in public discussion, especially on programs, touching and concerning matters of the budget and finance issues and so on. So Dennis Strong has long been a financial analyst in this program and a contributor to many media events, many media programs and discussion programs, whether on Nationwide, whether on Power 106, whether on RJR, you name it. Dennis Strong has often been on programs as a financial analyst. Dennis Strong, like many other persons, essentially serves also as a public affairs commentator based on his skill sets, based on his experience, based on his expertise, and based on the many entities that he would have served both in the private sector in this country and in the public sector. So Dennis Strong, in his capacity as a financial expert, a financial analyst, and indeed a public affairs commentator, was engaged by the media in relation to matters touching on concerning the Integrity Commission's report into the Prime Minister. And Dennis Strong would have provided his perspectives and views in relation to this business of 28 accounts, and he would have done so from the background of and from the standpoint of his experience as a certified chartered accountant and a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants here in Jamaica. He would have done so based on his considerable skill sets and experience. This is a man who served at JMMB. He served at Daring, Bunting and Golding, I gather. He has served on the board of GK, some Grace Kennedy organization. He has served as the Chief Executive Officer of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Most recently, he has been serving as the General Secretary of the Jamaica Football Federation. And one thing Dennis Chung would have distinguished himself with is the whole business of fixing or turning around organizations that he has been associated with, especially from a governance standpoint. He has managerial and leadership skill sets, and the man is eminently and suitably qualified to be Chief Technical Director at the FID. But here comes the PNP seeking to tear the man down, when in fact this same Dennis Chung, who they profess supports Andrew Holness, is the man who Simsimilla, Portia Lucretia Simsimilla, with Butch R. Scott as local government minister. He is the man they tapped when the PNP was in office back in 2015 to be the chairman of the National Solid Waste Management Authority. In a most unprecedented way, Mike Henry appointed Dennis Chung to serve in that Bruce Golding administration as the chairman of another public body, Ultimate Tires. Yes? Publicly owned outfit. And when Mike Henry and the JLP demitted office, Omar Davies, in a very unprecedented way, an incoming minister, had Dennis Chung remaining as chairman of Ultimate Tires. Very unprecedented, because when governments change, they usually change out certain appointees. And as I mentioned, Dennis Chung, yeah, went on, yes, to serve as the chairman of the National Solid Waste Management Authority, when a card-carrying comrade presided over a fiasco at the National Solid Waste Management Authority, that being Mr. Steve Ashley. Steve Ashley was the chairman of the NSWMA. Mrs. Simsimilla's good friend, Jennifer Edwards, former parliamentarian. Yes? She was at the time the chief executive, the executive director there at the NSWMA, when we had fire raging in this country for days, smoke locking down the city, no production could happen, schools had to be closed, businesses had to close their doors because smoke and the overhang of smog was in the air. The PNP was in power at the time. Mrs. Simsimilla was Prime Minister, Peter Phillips was the Finance Minister, and Butch R. Scott was the local government minister. And that fire, that famous Riverton fire, waged for days. And Mrs. Simsimilla told the Jamaican people that Jennifer Edwards didn't start the fire. And then she was laughing in our face, as if she thought it was funny. Good morning, Mrs. Simsimilla. Continue to enjoy your retirement, ma'am. Your well-deserved retirement, ma'am. And I am happy to have been among those who retired you. Good morning, ma'am. But lest I digress, let me come back on side. It was Dennis Chung who the PNP government of the day tapped to go to the National Solid Waste Management Authority to fix things down there. So whatever the hypocrites like Peter Bunting, Dayton Campbell, Mark Golding, and Julian Robinson will come to say to the public at 12 o'clock today or sometime after 12 this afternoon, it is to be scoffed at and frowned on by us as well-thinking and sensible Jamaican people. Dennis Chung went to fix things financially at JFF because JFF was in turmoil in terms of the state of their finances. So much so that FIFA had them on chalk line, had them on a, the JFJ was at risk of being in FIFA's bad books because there were questions regarding financial issues in relation to the management of JFF's Finances and Financial Affairs. Dennis Strong, as General Secretary, went and sorted out the JFF. Now we hope our football program is successful in the months ahead in relation to World Cup qualification. But this is the same Dennis Strong that the PNP will be coming to tear down, or seeking to tear down. And we must reject that as patriotic, right-thinking, and well-thinking Jamaicans. Because the gentleman, it is well known, is a financial analyst, and just like John Jackson, Keith Collister, Alison Peart, and Shirley, many of those persons, Keith Collister, who serve as, commentators, Dr. Adrian Stokes. So what? If Dr. Adrian Stokes had been appointed as Chief Technical Director down at FID, what would you do? Come and shout it down and say, he has been on program talking about this and talking about that? What rubbish? What rubbish? And this is the same hypocritical PNP in relation to Ronnie Florence, Dayton Campbell's friend from university days, who was not the product. And hear the fundamental difference here, listeners. Watch me now and watch me very, very carefully. That is why this trailer twists up like a bicycle, like those little bicycles ridden by the Alls and the Marshes of this world. And that is why other little bicycles ensure that them don't come a road when the trailer is on the road. They have gone as far as to block me from calling into their program, because they know what will become of their little bicycle when it buck up in this trailer. Now let me be very clear. Dennis Strong is the product of a competitive recruitment exercise. Ronnie Florence would have gotten his job as the product of a competitive recruitment exercise at the IC. That is his substantive job. However, Ronnie Florence, consequent on whatever happened with the holder of the office in previous months, that is Mrs. Keisha Prince Kamika, who was the holder of the office of Director of Corruption Prosecution at the Integrity Commission. Yes? Some curious things happened with Mrs. Prince Kamika. It seems to have been someone's design and someone's wish for her to no longer hold that office. Keisha Prince Kamika had been serving as the Director of Corruption Prosecution at the Integrity Commission. This is the lady who elected not to proffer charges, even while Kevin Stevenson, who has, by the way, been reappointed to serve as Director of Investigations at the Integrity Commission for another 5-year term. Quite curiously, and in a most concerning way, because the investigation that should be taking place and the investigation that we as members of the public should be apprised of, based on the letter that Camina Johnson-Smith and Ed Bartlett wrote to them in relation to Ronnie Florence's appointment and other developments concerning the Integrity Commission, we have not heard V nor Va about it. We have heard neither V nor Va about it. And so the question is, what are the circumstances that led to Mrs. Tamika Fiddler Blake's resignation as a senior investigator at the Integrity Commission? It is alleged, listeners, that Tamika Fiddler Blake disagreed with some action, some shenanigans that allegedly took place in relation to that investigation into Andrew Michael Holness. That investigation, of course, sees Kevin Stevenson or saw Kevin Stevenson presiding as the director, the senior director in charge of investigations. Mrs. Fiddler Blake was one of his subordinates. She resigned. And the leaders of government business, Camilla Johnson Smith, per the Senate, and Edmund Bartlett, per the House of Representatives, have both written to the chairman of the Integrity Commission, retired Justice Carol Lawrence Beswick. We haven't heard V nor Va about that request. She wrote back to them and talked about specific information and whatnot, and they wrote back to her. We don't hear nothing from them since then, and we want to know wagwan. So now, in circumstances where Keisha Prince Kamika, who was the former director of corruption prosecution, yes, was allegedly told not to reapply for the job, and essentially was booted from the Integrity Commission, and consequent on her being booted, Ranif Lawrence has been put in that position to act as director of corruption prosecution. Yes, the same Ranif Lawrence who is Kumbolo with Dayton Ricardo Campbell. Unlike Dennis Strong, Ranif Lawrence is not the product of a competitive recruitment process. He held a substantive post in the department or in the division in terms of corruption prosecution by way of competitive recruitment. But he was apparently, in my view, handpicked by Greg Christie to go and act as director of corruption prosecution. And persons like myself, having regard to the role that Ranif Lawrence is to discharge at the Integrity Commission in this dispensation where he is acting as director of corruption prosecution, and having regard to him being a bosom buddy and cumbolo with somebody like a Dayton Ricardo Campbell, who I cannot say on radio what I think of him and what the average Jamaican think of him. Yes? Can't say that on radio. But them a cumbolo. And he is the person who is not the product of a competitive recruitment process in circumstances where he's now acting as director of corruption prosecution because the other lady was chased away allegedly from the IC. The lady, her contract was coming to an end in March, and then the lady not only had her contract not renewed, she was also allegedly told that she must not even seek to reapply. What can go so? And we want to know how it go. And that is why the two leaders of government business in the two houses of parliament have written to retired Justice Carol Lawrence Beswick in relation to the matter. And you will have four hypocrites in a few minutes. Mark Golding, Peter Bunting, Dayton Campbell, and Julian Robinson coming to sound off about Dennis Strong. Dennis Strong, unlike Ranif Lawrence, is the product of a competitive recruitment process. Just like how the $31 million surgical equipment, that set of surgical equipment, which they have erroneously characterized as a drill in order to make mischief, was the product of a competitive procurement process. So just to be clear, listeners, it is not a drill that costs $31 million. It is really a set of very important neurosurgical medical equipment. It involves a drill which is on the invoice for 3.9 million Jamaican dollars, and a whole heap of other something coming up to $27 million. And then the maintenance agreement adds another 4 million, taking the total tally to 31 million. That is how it go. That is how the invoice go. So when you hear Alfred Dawes running up and down the place and people like Lambert Brown, I will fix him up next week, Friday in the Senate. Don't worry about that part. He don't have any mouth in the Senate. He has mouth when he comes onto this station and talks with Conrad O'Brien on a Monday and whenever else he is invited. The mouth that he has on News Talk, he has no such mouth in the Senate on a Friday. That Lambert Brown. Talking about he will leave me to Andre Stevens. Abdicating. He's a lawmaker, Andre Stevens is not. And what he must do is to use the platform in the Senate to identify and draw attention to any erroneous information I may have entered into the public domain. He should come with some degree of intellectual rigor and capacity to challenge anything I say. He can't do that. So he throws in the towel and tells the public that he will leave me to Andre Stevens. That is the PNP relying on a man with mental health challenges to propagandize and, of course, do all kinds of things on social media, which includes defaming people, as he did in the case of Ryan Strawn on that SSL matter. But just to be clear, what is being bandied about as a $31 million costing drill is not in fact so. It is a set of things that come up to the $31 million. And contrary to what Mr. Headboy was on Jeffrey Tavares' YouTube program talking about, was it on Tuesday? Yes, it was on Tuesday. That there was a breaking up of the procurement and a breaking up of the purchasing of the thing, a breaking up of the procurement. In procurement they call it splintering, and that is not what happened here. There was no splintering here. So Mr. Headboy, ensconced in St. Kitts and Nevis, talking about me playing cricket at Maxwell Park as though that is a crime, go and indicate to me where in the books in Jamaica it is prohibited for me to be a member of the Kingston and St. Andrew Cricket Association. Where is it prohibited, sir, for me to play cricket with poor ghetto youths and be the captain of the cricket team there at Kingston and St. Andrew Cricket Association, as I did serve as in the past? Where is that unlawful? Anyway, a lawsuit has since been filed against Dr. Alfred Dawes. And as part of that bundle, legal bundle, there are some invoices that set out some pertinent line items. There are no fewer than 100 attachments with this quote-unquote surgical drill. Because just to be clear, listeners, it is not a surgical drill on its own that comes up to $31 million. But Alfred Dawes didn't quite say those things. The surgical drill itself comes to the tune of 3.9 million Jamaican dollars. Then there are two other expensive elements. There's something for $4.1 million here, which is actually more expensive than this electrical drill thing for 3.9 million. The 4.1 million is for the electric console. Just like how you'd buy a game console, like an Xbox console, there's a part of this drill system called an electric console, and that is to the tune of 4.1 million Jamaican dollars. And there are three other things that cost $2.5 million each. One of them named Midas Microsaw. So I guess Microsaw is there because it have a cut through bone. Then another one named Microsaw reciprocating thing. This one named Midas Saw Sagittal. So these are all technical neurosurgical equipment. There is 20, from a quantity standpoint, there's an aspect of the attachment here in this whole drill saga, that there's 20 of them that were purchased in this thing. The thing is called a tool. Well, it's a tool. It says MR8 and it says taper 1.5 mm diameter. And this costs, there's 20 of those that are ordered. So the point is, Dennis Strong is the product of a competitive recruitment, unlike Ronnie Florence in relation to his acting assignment as Director of Corruption Prosecution. And the PNP must come and tell us, why did Mr. Simpson Miller tap him, Dennis Strong, to have served in 2015 if it wasn't for his capacity and demonstrable skill set and expertise to so serve and serve appropriately? Not dissimilar to why the recruiters at FID would have found it appropriate to engage him. We're out of time on this edition. Join me tomorrow. I'll be back here tomorrow for more on Straight Up.